Yeah.
All right, so this is CoE, the maiden voyage with Juan Araya. Juan, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Seth. No, it's great talking to you and very excited about the topic today.
Excellent. So in this first conversation, we're going to kick things off by just talking about lessons learned from the Uber days. Folks will see in the bio that you've moved on and you're now a striker, but just taking a step back and kind of looking at where we just were, the idea is what have we learned and what are we taking in? I do want to make an editorial note that my dog is out of her crate and she is back there making noise if you can hear her.
Not perceived at this point in time, so we're good.
Fair enough. It provides context even when you do hear it.
Okay.
So now that you are in the new shop, when you think of the old shop, what are the kind of the lessons learned that you reflect on?
Yeah, so actually, I think it's a very interesting time when you actually change jobs, and it can happen within the same company, or you might move from one company to another. And I think it's always a great opportunity to reflect on what you learned and what you're bringing with you out into the future. So for me, that's how I'm looking at this period of time. So this is quite timely in terms of the kind of things that I'm thinking. And again, it's one of those things that you want to keep them fresh and actually write them down, which I do. So try to keep track of those things, because otherwise you keep forgetting a little bit about those things. You get too involved in the new job itself, and then you forget about some things that you learned. So actually keeping track of those is important. So actually, I'm going to start off by commenting on one thing, which I just realized that I had forgotten, like even after a few weeks. And I said, wow, this was so big at Uber. And I need to make sure that I get this right. And again, I've been focusing on the immediate challenges, but this was something that I think we should do. And it's around defect elimination and everything related to process improvement, which you'll find in many shared services. Of course, it's centered around the idea of defects, permitting opportunities, the Six Sigma sort of thing. But within Uber, defect elimination was core. It was part of what we did. It was a key metric. It was discussed at every level of the organization. And that made the team very flexible, because we were not in love with just doing work, but we were more worried about how do we keep on improving in the way of getting rid of work for customers, right? So if we eliminated those defects, it meant that the customers didn't have a need to call us or reach out to us or for us to do something. And again, in the case of Uber, this was huge. The one thing that it's also maybe a concern, or something that people might be concerned of, is once you start being very proactive about it, it also means that you are doing less work. And that might get people a little bit anxious, like, well, if I eliminate defects, I'm eliminating my own job, which it's right. That's really what the goal was at Uber, and we were conscious about it. And we felt very comfortable. So along with defect elimination, you need to make sure that you're also trying to find ways to add value with the capabilities that you already have in place. So probably that's the first thing that I would call out as a concept that it's really old. It comes from now maybe of 100 years of when it started with the Japanese, but at a company like Uber, it had an interesting twist, and it was very real.
I find it interesting that you mention it as a double-edged sword as opposed to two different weapons. Defect elimination and then kind of the value add, the innovation that can come from that. Why do you couple those together as opposed to separate them?
Yeah, so because one solves for the other. And it's once you start thinking about eliminating defects, you also need to figure then what is it that you are doing. And you need to maybe look at it more strategically. And it's not so much I am processing something, that's my job, but maybe when you look at it at a center level, it's more what is our capability and what kind of skill set do we have, what kinds of things we could do. Maybe they require a little training from our end. And those are the things that you might want to think about, not so much about, well, we know how to process an invoice. Yes, you have that, but maybe you can automate it, or maybe you can eliminate it altogether. What can you do with a group of 30 people that have that ability to do certain tasks? And maybe there's something that you can do with it. So the reason why I put them together is because it solves for your now a new immediate problem of, well, I've just eliminated my own job. And I can still add value, which I think that's also the right mindset. You're building on capabilities that should support the organization. And well, maybe at some point you're actually eliminating jobs, which it's something that happens. It's actually a good goal to have. But maybe at the same time, you've already invested a ton of time, money, resources in building those capabilities. Before you let those go, is there anything else that you can do with it? And that's the idea.
It's also, you're moving from tactics to strategies. And if you're the strategic thinker, we can't get rid of you because you're the one that knows about the strategy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So that's one big one. What else might be on this list?
Yeah. So probably so that was one that I kind of had not that much present in my mind recently, but the one that I always keep in mind from my Uber days is how culture in a way beats having strong processes when you have a highly unstable environment. And what I mean here is sometimes you want to have your processes right, you want to have things very well structured, you want to have your procedures very well documented, and of course that gives you confidence that you can run certain things. At Uber, the environment was very unstable. Things changed a lot, growth was incredible, and we just didn't have time to have many of those things that traditionally you would have. So instead of trying to carry out those tasks, and I mean documenting and making sure that every process is very well structured before going ahead, we just didn't have that luxury, and we would probably not do that very well. We focused a lot on culture, and we focused a lot on principles. And again, for that type of environment, when it's unstable, having the right culture, and I mean having the mindset within the teams that they know what to do in general under certain circumstances, certain principles that will guide decision making, it makes a big difference, and it helps a lot. So I think that really made a difference for us, and it made it easy, it made it manageable, and it made us mature out into the future. And again, maybe this is not something that's applicable to every situation, but sometimes you have smaller teams that are in an unstable environment. Maybe the lesson here is let's focus on what are those principles, what are those big ideas that the team needs to get right. And then from there, you can build on other things like processes, procedures, that sort of thing.
And as opposed to a culture of chaos, allowing the culture to provide the stability is essentially what we're saying, no matter what the environment.
Exactly. You put it in a better way than I just did, because you are bringing the stability through your decision-making process, and you're giving people certain tools that they know that will support them deal with that unstructured environment. So yes, yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now we're getting somewhere here. We've kind of got eliminating your own job and creating a new job, all in one fell swoop. having that stability in the culture, no matter what the environment. Okay, two big ones, certainly.
Yeah, those are big. Something else that was quite unique about Uber was how Uber being a technology company and a very innovative company, it has the DNA of innovators. And one thing that maybe it's discussed a lot, but not necessarily well understood, is how innovation is not something that happens randomly. It's not something that happens by just sitting around. It requires a lot of effort. And usually that effort requires you to test things out and be willing to just do some things and see what happens and see if certain things work. So testing is another learning that I take from my Uber days, because it happened a lot and we did it in many different ways. And I think it's applicable to a number of circumstances where you don't know how things are going to work, but well, maybe you have a hypothesis around it. Why not try it out in a small scale? Some companies kind of do that. They run pilots. Sometimes those pilots are also too lengthy, in my opinion. So if you can do even smaller scale tests, give yourself some space to test things out, then I think that's just a great mechanism for you to learn and to figure how to make some changes and make a process better, a different kind of contribution. But yeah.
So this is the fail quickly thing, which we've certainly heard, right? When innovating,
Yes.
Do it as quickly as possible. But I'm actually hearing the other side of that, which is you're saying, hey, innovation isn't magic. You actually have to apply deliberative process to get the innovation that you seek.
Exactly, and it's not an esoteric type of effort that you need to put. It's real work, and the work is, let's design a test. And we used to do that, and it's actually designing a test, trying to figure out what is it that you want to try out, try to determine what's the outcome that you might be looking to have, and then do it. But again, it does require effort, and it's how innovation happens.
Yeah. Innovation is a marathon, not a unicorn.
Exactly. Yes.
Although unicorn does have other connotations, so I should back off of that.
Yes. Which, by the way, talking about unicorns and talking about Uber is, I think it's going to be, it looks like it's going to have an IPO soon. So now it's going to realize its unicorn status at some point. So we'll see how that happens. It's going to make a lot of people a lot of money.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, one would wonder if you still have your shares and how that works, but maybe that's a different conversation for another time, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll let you know, but I'm not going to be a millionaire soon. So that's
okay.
That's the bottom line.
Two of us, right?
Yeah.
Count the dog. All right. So there's the innovation piece. That's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Do you have another quick one or two?
Yeah, I might have a couple more. So something that's at the core of what happens in shared services is automation. And Uber had a very unique way of handling this, again, because it's a technology company and it had all the resources to do it. Most companies don't have that. And most shared services don't have that luxury. Which is, again, something that was unique to Uber. But the one thing that I did learn from being part of such an organization is that it makes a big difference if you have this very well integrated into your operation. So the closer that you can get this automation resources to what you're actually doing, and not a team that's too far from you, or even a vendor, which the relationship it's not as close as literally being part of your team, then it doesn't work. But if you can make it closer, the closer that you can make it, then the better. And it makes you move really fast. And it actually makes automation work, which I think it's part of the challenges as well, that automation can be not only costly, but lengthy, and might not even have the results that you expect. So my learning is make sure that if you're going to try it, to have it as close as you can, because that's going to be the key, probably the key component in making it a successful program.
So no matter where you put the CoE, just don't put it in an ivory tower. That's essential.
Yes, exactly.
Put it anywhere else.
Yeah, and open the doors for the IT guys to be working with you side by side, and not only the basic support, but the ones that are actually developing new stuff. It makes a huge difference. So yeah, I wish more companies did that. I think the automation efforts would be much more successful than they seem to be.
Yeah. So, and we'll get back to the IT piece, in future conversations. But how would we round out this conversation? What else would you add to this list?
Yeah. So this is something also that I've been thinking a lot about, and this is kind of like a boring topic, but it's true, and it's always true, and it's good managers make a difference. And it did for us. Again, we had huge growth, and it was very fast as well. And we had all this things going on at the same time. Having good managers in the team allowed us to deal with the environment in a better way, allowed us to solve problems. And it's something that you need to work on a daily basis. So it's not that you bring someone that's good and then you leave them alone. No, you need to make sure that if you're going to bring a good manager, you need to hire well, but you need to support them, keep the development of those individuals flowing, support them, make sure that they're engaged as well. But it will reward you in many different ways, and it solves lots of problems. And I also see this happening in a number of organizations where, especially when they're either starting up or they are growing, or there's a particular need, sometimes there's a rush around getting someone in the team, and maybe not taking enough time to either hire or select the right individual. But getting a good, solid people manager, it does make a difference. They can have a huge impact beyond their specific technical knowledge. So that's a basic thing, but it's still true.
Yeah, and you're kind of sharing what your role is in that, and making sure to hire the right person, making sure to give yourself time to hire the right person, and all that, and support, creating that support and ensuring that support continues. Can you give us a quick list of, not necessarily list, but a quick, set of thoughts on good managers do and good managers don't? So good managers do the X. Good managers don't do Y. What would a couple of those be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think good managers understand their customers, understand the environment, and understand their capabilities. So I think that's a starting point. So a good manager knows where they are and what they have and what they need to do. That's one thing. So they don't, by saying this, they don't start off by thinking that they know it all. So they need to take care of understanding their environment, and especially their customers. Good managers do have great communication skills, and the role of the manager requires you to communicate to your teams, to other stakeholders, to your customers, to other management teams. So communication is very, very important, and it's a task that only managers can do in certain organizations. And then the other thing that great managers do is they keep the team engaged. And engaged is not the same as keeping them happy, but it's carrying out the activities on a daily basis in a way that make people feel that the work that they do is important. So they do, for example, performance management. They give it the right importance. They take the time to do performance reviews. They take the time to do good goal setting. They take the time to provide good feedback. They take care of figuring out development opportunities. And at the core, for most people, those are the things that create engagement. of course, people do care about money, benefits, those things. But once you've covered the basics, those other engagement elements make a difference. And a good manager then keeps the team motivated and keeps the team aligned with those type of tasks.
Yeah.
So yeah, those would be probably my high level view of what good managers do.
Yeah, I appreciate the distinction between engaged and happy. Almost, if you're just doing happy, that's not quite the whole thing. You know what I mean? What would be maybe just a couple of good managers don't, beyond the obvious?
Yeah, so probably the opposite of everything I just
Sure, of course.
I've just mentioned, but I think that maybe the most significant scenes would be to not consider their teams as individuals, and meaning thinking of them just as, let's call, resources, but not as individuals or even a team, like as an amorphous type of blob, right? That can be really toxic, because then again, the engagement of the individuals within that team is just goes down, because you're not an individual, you're nobody in a sense. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And then the other one is not taking care of how you communicate in certain situations. Like, I think that some individuals might underestimate the importance of certain interactions. And there are certain key moments that are key for your team, that are key for your organization, that are those moments of truth, let's call it. And you need to know that you're dealing with those things and that you handle them adequately. And I think that good managers know those and then take advantage of them. Good ones might brush them off and not give them the right importance. And then they either miss opportunities, or they damage relationships, or they just fail at developing trust. So yeah.
That is great. All of that is really cogent, and I very much appreciate you sharing your lessons from Uber. We will kind of over the next few kind of dive in on what the more present things. But for the time being, this is again the maiden voyage. I very much appreciate you doing this, Juan.
Yeah, no, thank you. So this is great. It's very good for me to go through these thoughts. It helps you, but I'm happy to share these ideas, and maybe it's useful for some of your viewers here. And it's always great talking to you.